Wake up, Twins territory. Happy Tuesday night. Thanks for joining us on the newest episode of Twins Hangout, a humble podcast that presents you with unmatched information. We aim to be the most accurate, 100% baseball-related Twins podcast on the face of the planet. As always, I'm joined by Seth Stowe, who has just recently returned to his native Canada after a weekend in Cedar Rapids, or somewhere around Canada. Seth, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, and first and foremost, happy Canada Day to all of our Canadian listeners. I'm sure there's at least one or two of you, eh? And there's been a process for us, to get through these things, and we apologize for last week's mix-up. But Jeremy and I do want to talk about the Twins and the entire organization, and we'll do that here. But first of all, nice introduction. I really like that. Did you work on that for a long time?
I worked on that this evening. I needed to get something a little more creative,
Very creative.
Just a reminder, you can not only find us here, but also on iTunes. The question and answer feature is enabled, so if you want to ask us a question that we'll see immediately, do that. What the process is after this goes down tonight, I will rip the audio and upload it onto iTunes, and then we'll tweet out a link so you can download this. If you're watching it and you don't want to stay up with us and you want to listen to it later in your car or whatever, download us on iTunes, and you can listen to us there. If you're wondering why last week's episode didn't work, obviously there was an audio issue, but you can still view that on Twins Daily. There is our Hangout from last week is live, but it's just not on iTunes because we didn't want to, make you listen to something that made it really hard, which is really too bad because Seth forecasted exactly what was going to happen in Twins territory last week, and we couldn't all hear it.
And that's why people need to listen to the show.
Right, because the times that you cut out, you're actually saying something really profound that I'm probably disagreeing with that then did come true. So the biggest news over the last week was probably the news that Jorge Polanco, who was last year in Cedar Rapids as a colonel, and we both saw him there, and then is playing in Fort Myers, was called up. Now, a lot of that probably had to do with him being on the 40-man roster, knowing this wasn't going to be a long-term thing. But tell us a little bit about probably what was going on behind closed doors with the Twins to make that decision.
Well, I would think it's not just probably 40-man roster related. I think it's 100% 40-man roster related. I don't think anyone thinks, and this decision has nothing to do with the readiness of Jorge Polanco. The thing is they knew that Trevor Plouffe and Eduardo Nunez would both be coming back off of the disabled list on Monday, and it was, I believe, Thursday that they made that transaction. They could have called up Doug Bernier, who certainly has been terrific in Rochester again this year, but that would have meant putting him on the 40-man roster, which would mean taking someone off of the 40-man roster. And it's not like that can't be done, but do you really want to potentially lose a player, quality or not, for a 4-day stint? And Polanco's on the 40-man roster. He's playing pretty well down in Fort Myers since he got off to that fast start. He's been solid. He's been playing primarily shortstop, but I think the biggest thing that made this okay for the Twins to do is because Polanco is very mature despite the fact that he's just 20. You kind of knew that he would have the ability to come up, and whether he had hits like he did, or if he would have gone 0-for-5, or if he would have not played, he was going to come out of it just fine. But as you know, we saw them send Polanco back down to Fort Myers, and we've seen that since he's been down there in the 2 games, he's been playing second base. I mean, there's kind of a lot going on there too. So, at the end of the day, we probably should have predicted it. I thought Doug Bernier for some reason, because he certainly has earned it too. But with the 40-man roster involved, it was the only choice.
Right, and I guess for me, when I first saw it, it was surprise.
Yeah.
And I guess my thought was, well, I thought that maybe Rosario had a chance, but again, Rosario's not on the 40-man, and we can talk more about that later, because there was a Jeff Passan article today that kind of hit on some things that I had mentioned previously. But the thing with Polanco is he was obviously in spring training, so he'd been exposed to some of the big league stuff. I mean, as much as you can be in spring training, and had played really well in the Dominican League over the winter. So, he was I want to say like the third overall pick in that draft, and played second base basically all winter and played well, and really just seemed to build off that and continue to play well. When do you think the next time will be when we hear that Jorge Polanco is a Minnesota Twin?
Honestly, I don't think it would be yet this year unless he just goes on an absolute tear here over the last month or two of the regular season down in Fort Myers. But I would expect it'll be more later in the 2015 season, if not even 2016. You got to assume he's going to spend most of next year in New Britain and probably, have the ability to be on the Twins roster starting anytime in 2016. So yeah, I mean, it's exciting to see, but I think we do need to kind of step back and just realize how young he is. But again, he did show his maturity and his confidence and all those things. I talked to Jake Maurer a little bit while I was down in Cedar Rapids each day that I was there, and the first thing I said was, Polanco was here last year, and are you surprised at the decision? And he goes, well, clearly it was a roster decision, but they had a lot of confidence in him as a person and in his ability to handle that type of situation. They really, that by the organization just really has a lot of respect and really like Jorge Polanco.
And one thing that should probably be noted, and I've seen it reported wrong, basically once he was added, he had to be added to the 40-man after last season. So as soon as that happens, he comes into spring training. If he doesn't make the team, he's optioned out. So as far as wasting an option year or burning an option year, I've seen a lot of those things said on Twitter. Burning a red shirt, that's not how it works. He was optioned out late March, and regardless of whether he played in the major leagues this year or not, he used his first option year. Now the thing that works for Polanco, not only Polanco but also potentially Oswaldo Arcia and Max Kepler, is that because they were placed on the 40-man roster after their first full season in the minor leagues, when they potentially run out of options, so if Polanco is optioned again in 2015 and then 2016, in 2017, even though he's used 3 option years, he doesn't have 5 full years of professional experience, so he could be optioned a 4th time. And that's a rare thing. It only really pertains to international guys, but Oswaldo Arcia right now is in his 3rd option year, and the Twins could apply for a 4th option year next year if the situation came up. So really, I mean, with Polanco and Kepler, it was a no-brainer to add those guys to the 40-man, because it's basically like, oh, we're going to get 3 years after this year. We just have to burn a space with these 2 guys in 2014. It just so happened that he came up and played pretty well, for 3 or 4 days, and then got sent back down. Speaking of that, we should probably talk more about the moves that led to such an unpredictable transaction. Unsurprising in the move that was made, but surprising in how it happened. Aaron Hicks was optioned to New Britain on Wednesday. And Seth, that is a move that you predicted right here last Tuesday night.
Yeah, I'm surprised there's so much, surprise about that move. It's interesting. I mean, there's a reason that he was sent on his rehab to New Britain, despite the fact that Eddie Rosario was there and they had other guys that could play center field, whereas at Rochester you've got an infielder in Eric Ferris who has been doing a very good job as the center fielder for the Red Wings. There's a reason they sent him to Double-A, and it's that he is, I think it's fair to say, he's been pretty lost this year, and he was pretty lost last year. I think they're sending him back to a place where he most recently had success, and I think they've told him that he will bat both ways. He will switch hit, and I think they're just saying, hey, let's send you back to the last place you had success. Let's let you find it again and hope that you can kind of get back to where you were prospect-wise a year and a half ago. I mean, I think that's what it's come to.
Yeah, and I think in hindsight, and Terry Ryan said it, it's my fault that he's not getting better. Um, I don't think any of us could have predicted that this was going to happen. He played really well in spring training, won the job. I mean, not that there was a huge competition not that he had huge competitors competing with him, but he won the job fair and square last year, struggled, showed glimpses of what he could do, but it was just one of those things that in hindsight, it didn't work out and really was getting a do-over this year, but just, he hasn't had it. And giving him that opportunity to go back to New Britain and succeed, whether it happens or not, I think it's going to be easier, hopefully an easier adjustment for him and hopefully a message to him that things need to change. And if the Twins were to need a center fielder, I would hope that Rosario would be in the mix, but I wouldn't be shocked if Eric Ferris got that call either, even though, he hasn't been a primary center fielder up until this year. It wouldn't shock me if he had the opportunity to do that for the Twins if, say Sam Fuld got hurt before Danny Santana came back.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me necessarily, and yet it goes back to, I mean, if it comes down to it and it's a shorter term type of thing, I mean, Hicks is on the 40-man roster, and he's too talented to not be on the 40-man roster. You're not just going to let him go either. Yeah, I think they'd go back to him at that point. I mean, look at right now, they've got Parmalee playing some center field, so you're probably right. But I think the best thing for Aaron Hicks is just to let him play the rest of the year, through the good, through the bad, through whatever it is. Just let him get back and play again.
In the major leagues?
No, just play at Double-A. Just let him keep playing the rest of the year.
Right.
Maybe if he's playing great, he goes back up to Rochester, and then just let him finish out the year there. And as you've said many times, I don't necessarily disagree. Let him start next year in Rochester and earn his way back up again.
But I think you're defending what I'm saying by if there was an issue, let's not call him up because there's still potential there. Eric Ferris is a non-prospect, but he can play center field. And let's not jerk Aaron Hicks around. As hard as I have been on him, let's not jerk him around because long-term there's still a possibility that he could play. And bringing him back up to Minnesota if there was an injury and sticking him in every day, even though he's struggling, that wouldn't necessarily be the best for him. So what's best for him is have some success, gain some confidence, whether that's in New Britain or Rochester. Let that happen. Let him come to spring training. I don't even know if he's necessarily competing for that center field job. And let's move on from there. Going back to the transaction, did you want to say something else quick?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, for those of you that follow me on Twitter, this is nothing new, but Saturday night I had the opportunity to interview Twins Hall of Famer, or I guess Twins legend and Hall of Famer, Rod Carew, who was down in Cedar Rapids for Twins night. And, I posted part 1 last night. Part 2 I just posted minutes before the show started. I'm also going to do a part 3 in which I asked the question about Aaron Hicks, because I talked to Hicks this spring, and he said he talks to Carew quite frequently. Every couple of weeks they worked out, they hit together in the off season. They both live in Southern California. I asked him if he's had a chance to talk to Aaron Hicks and see how he's doing, how he's been. I even made the little comment in there saying, I'm guessing he's struggling right now and kind of lost in a way. And he said, and you can read this in part 3 of that interview probably tomorrow, but he basically said that he chewed him out. He had a conversation. He called it almost like a father-son conversation and said Aaron Hicks is arguably one of the top, if not the best athlete in the Twins organization, and he doesn't want to see that talent go to waste. And kind of conveyed some of the other things that the organization has been saying, that he needs to put in the work, he needs to put in the time. Otherwise, if he doesn't, he can just sit in the minor leagues for a long time. So I mean, that's pretty blunt from a guy who does have a very strong relationship with him.
I think the thing that's hurting Hicks the most is that he can look at the depth chart and see there's nobody really standing in his way. And if Span, for example, were still here, or Revere, if there's a guy in the way, I think it makes you play a little bit differently, play a little harder. Um, but yeah, that's interesting. Now another guy that could play center field is Danny Santana. Now he suffered a knee injury, like not a double, and the following day an MRI revealed a bone bruise. Um, they thought maybe the DL was avoidable. It happened to not be. But first, to get have someone on the bench, Johan Pino was optioned so Jorge Polanco could be recalled. Santana obviously headed to the DL, and then the Twins recalled Pino, even though he hadn't even left the Twins team. He was still in California with them. Did you find that interesting? How that came to be?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's almost a brilliant strategy. Although I don't think, or maybe it was intentional, I don't know. But basically, they sent down Pino the day after he made a start, called up Polanco, who was able to be there in the middle infield depth for 4 days, and then basically he got called back up when Santana went on the DL 2 days later, which means they actually kind of played with an extra person for a couple of days, which I think it's smart. The interesting thing, though, is because there's the rule that a player can't be optioned and then called back up unless there's an injury to a player of the same position. Well, Pino's a pitcher and Santana's an infielder, so the rule there is that because of that, they can't retroactivate the date of his disabled list stint. So despite the fact that he missed 4 or 5 games before he was put on the disabled list, he's still going to have to miss 2 weeks from the time that he was put on the disabled list. So that's a little bit technical and stuff, but
right. But I think your timing's off though, because I think it was he got hurt, and then Pino was optioned, and then it was the following day. It was only like 1 day.
I guess I thought it was a couple of games in between where they were trying to see how he was, but you could be right.
I mean, it may have been 2 days at the most, but Pino never left. He was in the dugout the only day that he was on option.
Right.
And then the way options work is that option doesn't actually count. So if he stays up for the whole year, not that it would matter really with him because he's another one of those non-prospect guys that just is there. This option year wouldn't even count, even though he was optioned. But yeah, I agree with you. The strategy was phenomenal.
Yep. Well, and I mean, the unfortunate thing is Santana was playing so well. And I know there's some people, some of our friends at the Talk to Contact podcast specifically, who have thrown his name out there as, an all-star possibility, and I don't think that's the case. But if you want to make the point that he's had a pretty important role, a valuable role on the Twins team, which has been able to play a new position, still play shortstop when needed and play pretty well, and then offensively what he's done, he's been pretty valuable. So you just hate to see a guy like that go out with an injury. Now, it doesn't sound like this is a very serious one or anything that's lengthy, but he's still going to miss 2.5 weeks of playing, and I think that's unfortunate. Hopefully he is to a point where he can get sent to Rochester for even just 2 or 3 games to get some swings in and some game time in before he gets brought back up to the Twins.
Which Talk to Contact podcaster was it that suggested that?
God, I'm not sure. I want to say maybe it was Paul. Maybe? Was it Paul? Paul, I know you're listening to this either tonight or tomorrow morning. So, Paul, if it was you, I think it was you. But if it wasn't you, I apologize.
Okay. Well, you're calling him out, and I'm gonna make sure that he knows about it.
All right, let's do that.
Because why not? He's also sporting a not so fancy mustache right now. If you've
Mustaches are cool.
Yeah, but his is borderline. His is kind of a dirty mustache. So, maybe he's listening, and maybe we can talk about that. Let's move on though, because I want to give you some time to talk about your Cedar Rapids trip, and I want to try to stay on the schedule that I've so carefully formatted, and we're already 5 minutes behind. But Polanco, so he has his impressive start, but yesterday he and Pedro Flormon were sent back down to Rochester and Fort Myers respectively, and Trevor Plouffe and Eduardo Nunez were activated, just to kind of cover the Twins transactions for the past 7 days. Now, Seth, why don't we talk about your weekend in Cedar Rapids?
All right. Well, it was a good weekend. My brother and I drove from, almost Canada down to the Twin Cities and stayed with my brother on the western side of the Twin Cities. And we got down to Cedar Rapids on Friday night around 4 o'clock by the time we got to the ballpark and went through a lot of rain and on the way to get down there. But it was a good time. We were there Friday night and saw Lewis Thorpe make a start. And by the way, we need to certainly give a shout out to Lewis's parents who came over and introduced themselves to me as I was going around trying to take pictures, which I'm sure if you checked out Twins Daily, you've seen some of them, or if you go to the Twins Daily Facebook page, I posted a whole bunch of pictures. But as I was taking pictures, his dad came up and started talking to me and introduced me to his mom, and they said that they listened to this show, and they said their flight from Los Angeles to Australia is about 16 hours, and they're able to listen to our show for that whole time. And I just asked if that was just one episode because we kind of keep talking all the time. But so it was good that night. He pitched well. I mean, even better than his line indicated. Saturday there was some rain. They only played about 6 1/3. Ryan Eads, I think, was okay. I mean, he gave up 5 runs in like 5 innings, but I thought again he showed that he can throw. He's got 3 good pitches, but it's like every at bat he makes one mistake, which of course you can't do. And then on Sunday afternoon we were able to see Ethan Mildren pitch, which he was tremendous. 7 shutout innings and just was 3 pitches, threw it through real well. Dallas Gallant threw an inning, and then, of course, we saw the debut of Nick Birdie, which probably didn't go as much as possible. But, it's a team that doesn't have a ton of what you'd call big prospects, but they've got a lot of really good ball players. And I think that's one thing you learn when you get an opportunity to go actually watch some of these games, is even the guys that aren't the prospects, maybe they're a year or two older than the quote-unquote league average, they're really good baseball players at the end of the day. But, again, that reminds us of just how good you have to be to get to the big leagues.
Right. So give me one single guy that you were most impressed with based on what your expectations were coming in?
Well, the guy that had just a huge weekend was Brian Harr. And I think he's a 23, 24-year-old out of college. He's the first year in full season. And, he had on Saturday night in the first inning, he had a big 3-run home run. And in the second inning, he had a grand slam. So 2 innings into the game, he had 2 home runs and 7 RBIs. And that was the night Rod Carew got to throw in batting practice. So that probably helped a little bit. But, again, just a solid player. He's a big guy. I mean, I looked at my scouting report in our Twins prospect handbook, and it says, he's a big guy, kind of looking for a position, good power, guess hitter, may swing and miss a bit, those kind of things. And not that any of those aren't true, but, even at third base, he looked pretty nimble over there, and he had a good arm. And like I said, when he made contact, the ball went a long ways.
Right, and now I think we had Harr as more of a first baseman because I think he played first base more. Did he look okay defensively at third base?
Yeah, he made the routine plays, which, of course, is, in my opinion, most important. But there were a couple he started a couple of double plays. He had to go probably – say 4 or 5 steps to his left one time, and he made the play cleanly and a perfect throw to second. So obviously when you go and see 3 games, your sample size on any of these is pretty small. But defensively, I thought he looked okay over there. I mean, and then you put a guy like Angel Vielma at shortstop next to him, or even Ryan Walker played Friday night at short, and Vielma played Saturday and Sunday at short. And, you appreciate their range and their arms and the things like that. They look like middle infielders, both of them do. I was very impressed with both of them defensively. But, if you've got guys like that, then if Harr doesn't have quite as much mobility at third, that's okay. Christensen also is a guy, the local guy from Cedar Rapids. He was quite impressive. I mean, I know he was like a 25th round pick out of Nebraska. But he's a guy that I think he's about 6'2" and probably about 210, 215. But he can fly. He had a ball to the right center field gap, and he has, for those that are listening that remember Devon White of the Toronto Blue Jays all those years ago, he was a tall guy who it seemed like took strides that it took about 4 steps for him to get from home to first or anything like that. And Christensen was the same way, very long strides and much quicker, I think, than what it looked like. Yeah, I talked to Jake a little bit about him, and he's played third, he's played first, he's played all three outfield positions, and despite the fact that he's played a lot on the corners, they say his best position is probably center field, and he can definitely track it down out there too. So, I mean, just a really good athlete. You know, he didn't have a lot of hits, but when he did, he probably had 3 over the 3 games. It was pretty impressive.
Just so we make sure we cover those Cedar Rapids moves, um, there were some transactions over the weekend. Obviously, Seth already mentioned that Nick Birdie made his debut. To make room for Birdie, Mitch Garver took a shot off his mask at one point, and I guess he was down for quite a while. League rules to make the Colonels put him on the disabled list with concussion stuff. So he's been out for a few days. He'll miss at least a week. Fernando Romero was placed on the DL with a sprained UCL, and Seth can talk more about that here momentarily. Nick Birdie obviously added, and then Michael Quesada was activated today after missing almost 2 weeks with a wrist contusion. So Seth, tell us a little bit about not only Fernando Romero but also the other pitchers that you got updates on.
Well, let's start with Romero. And I think we both saw the same news. I think I was headed to the cities on Thursday when we saw that there was the note. It might have even been Friday already that Romero wasn't going to start on Sunday. He was scheduled to start on Sunday, and I was all disappointed. And then I saw UCL sprain, and we all know what that means. And then Jeff Johnson actually posted something about the UCL sprain and that he was talking to Miguel Sano about Tommy John surgery and things like that. Romero was actually there all 3 days that I was there. I talked to Jake on Friday night and just said, where's he at? What are you hearing? And he goes, well, he's probably going to miss all year. We probably won't see him pitch again this year. They seem to know that he's got bone chips in his elbow that are going to probably have to be surgically removed. They're not at this point, they haven't done enough to say he has to have some sort of surgery or that kind of thing. He's going to go, and I don't know when that's happening. He's going to go meet with the Twins doctor, John Steebs, up in Minneapolis at some point, and probably have the surgery to remove the bone chips. And when they get in there, they'll be able to determine what more needs to be done. I think the betting person would say it's probably going to be Tommy John surgery. But there's a lot of people I know that are kind of holding out hope that the UCL may not be damaged, that there might just have been some swelling around there or something, and that it is just bone chips. But that might be a little overly optimistic. So I guess we'll see. I mean, it's too early to necessarily say it is this or it isn't that.
And I had talked to someone or read something, and I don't remember exactly what time or when this was, but that those bone chips, where they're located and how they move, that they can actually sever that ligament. And I think there was some speculation that may have been what happened with Scott Baker, that it didn't happen necessarily on a single pitch where the ligament snapped, but that there was a bone that was moving and just gradually wore that ligament out. Obviously Romero would have been a guy that, I think at the beginning of the year we thought he would have been a guy that would have spent time in Elizabethton. If you were to have some sort of arm surgery and be out, you're looking at 12, 13 months before he could maybe pitch in short season ball next year. That obviously sets his timetable back, but he could still be back up in Cedar Rapids off of Tommy John surgery in 2016 and not really be too far behind. So
2015, actually, potentially.
Well, I'm thinking if he comes back in short season ball and pitches for Elizabeth next year, that he could come opening day 2016 and be ready to roll. But obviously that's a lot of speculation, and with a guy that throws that hard, you're always going to have things like that. But it's too bad. Obviously, in addition to Romero, I believe I saw Randy Rosario had Tommy John surgery, so he's going to miss the rest of the year. And then Yorman Londa had a shoulder procedure done and is going to be out for the rest of the year. I think the timetable on that one was like 7 months. So, those the big three that, as we've referred to them, and Romero wasn't even included. If we call those the big four, we have one guy that's been demoted to the Appy League, where he's pitched okay, and then three guys who could potentially be missing significant time with arm injuries. So
yeah, I actually heard about the Yorman Londa surgery right after our podcast last week. It's too bad. He was pitching really well. He had a terrific first month in Cedar Rapids, and then started experiencing some of those troubles and did have surgery. Randy Rosario had surgery, I think, even before April was out, and I guess we'll see what happens with Romero. But to kind of go ahead.
What was Londa's deal? What was the surgery? Do you know? Was it labrum?
I'm not sure. I know it was a shoulder thing.
Okay.
So, but the Garver thing was interesting because I was really looking forward to getting a chance to see him play because he has hit the ball well, and I was impressed when I saw him in spring training. So I was really hoping to see him play both hitting and behind the plate. And Jake talked a little bit about him and told us again about him getting hit in the face mask and needing 6 stitches on his chin, and that they had to. It was mandatory, as you alluded to earlier. They had to put him on the 7-day list. I actually talked to him after the game, hanging out with our good friend Steve Boer at his favorite establishments. I talked to Mitch just a little bit, and he'd said that the ball hit him square, and that the padding at the bottom, kind of at the chin, the padding, it was hit so hard back that it did end up cutting him. It went right through the padding, the metal of the mask, and that's what cut him. And he actually told me that he didn't move for like 60 seconds according to the trainer, and before anything happened. So he was out pretty good. And but again, by Friday he said he was doing well, and I know Sunday he was going to take some swings and take a round of batting practice for the first time, and they're really hoping that it is just a 7-day thing with him. Kind of like Jason Kanzler earlier in the season had a 7-day thing where they had to put him on there, and it was just 7 days. He kind of cleared up, and things were okay at that point. So, again, hopefully that's the same with Garver.
And the concussion thing, obviously, I mean, it's not limited to a single sport. I mean, it's every sport. It's been kind of big time news, at least on my timeline over the last 24 hours. Ben Utek, a kid that played football, and he's now, I think, 33 years old, and he had 5 documented concussions as an NFL football player, and at 33, is losing his memory. And he's been a musician, and his recording a song like for his family. Those head injuries are scary things, and with Garver, I guess I wouldn't be shocked when he comes back if there's going to be more of a, he plays, he'll still catch, I mean, for now, but if he'll also get some time at first base, because Cedar Rapids seems to have 3 or 4 catchers on their active roster anyway, that maybe he could get some time somewhere else. Obviously, there's value in his bat.
Yep.
And just get him from taking those dings, because you look at Carlos Santana, you look at Joe Mauer, you look at guys all over the place that it's a big deal. So, it's a scary thing, and typically it's not, obviously Morneau had it, but not necessarily as a catcher, but that's the one position in baseball where you really have to worry about that type of thing.
Yeah, yep. And just to kind of continue, like I said, Garver was a real good guy, and clearly didn't want to be missing any playing time. And it's also, we talked a little bit about Alex Real, who was the Twins, 32nd round pick this year. He's signed and he's catching at Elizabethton. Garver said that while he was catching at New Mexico, he really primarily caught, and he played just a handful of games at first base, whereas Real did all the catching for them this last year, and he would play a lot of first base and DH in those previous years. These are things that you had told me, but to get it firsthand from him and talk about, he can hit a little bit. He's not a bad player, and it's kind of good to hear that firsthand from a guy who played with him for a couple of years in college as well. Michael Quesada, he was doing everything. He was catching bullpens, and he was doing infield practice and taking batting practice, so wasn't surprised to see that he was activated right away. I had a chance to talk to Bo Altabelli a bit, and he caught one of the games. I think the Saturday night game he caught, but he played first base the other 2 games. I asked him if he'd really ever played first base in college, and he said he really hadn't. He never really played first base before this spring. Actually, before he went to Cedar Rapids at the end of last season, he just got a few games in. But one of the things about Lewis Thorpe's line the other night, he gave up I think 3 runs and 5 1/3, and 2 of the runs came after a ball came towards him at first base, Altobelli, and it hit the lip and just completely bounced about 3 feet over his head. So, I mean, it's not an error, it's an earned run, but there's nothing he could have done. And, Altobelli is feeling bad because, okay, what could I have done? The fact that I haven't played here my whole life, could I have done something? And at the end of the day, the answer is no. But, that kind of discussion, which is kind of just, it's a fun discussion to have. So, what were the other ones? I mean, it was fun. I talked a lot with Zach Granite. I did a Q&A kind of thing, a video thing that you can find at Twins Daily with Zach Granite, who just came back from injury just in the last couple of weeks. He told me that he had an impingement in his shoulder and some other things going on in there. He couldn't raise his arm like above 90 degrees. So now he's good to go. He said he's still a little bit rusty, and Jake agreed with that too, but he's getting close. And, I mean, it's an interesting group of guys. Ryan Walker was, I talked to him quite a bit too. It's just, it's kind of good to be there and talk to some of these guys and kind of learn a little bit more about them.
For sure. Hey, let's do this. Before we move on to the rest of the minor leagues, let's spend 10 minutes talking about the Twins. So I think the story of the last 7 days, if we're going to break this down, the story of the last 7 days has been Chris Parmelee. Now, I don't have any stats in front of me, but he's been fantastic. And, I think I tweeted, I don't know if it was Saturday night, that he's at the point now where he's earned the right to be in the lineup. And the thing with him is you're not going to put him at first base because Mauer's there. You can't really put him at DH because Morales is there. You can't put him in right field every day because Arcia is there, but you can't put him in left field because Willingham's there. So my thought was, just rotate him through those spots, get him in the lineup every day for at least the next couple of weeks, just to see how he's doing. I think Gardy must, ghost follow me on Twitter because he got Parmelee in the lineup again on Sunday. Only he chuckled and put him in center field. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, it's kind of nice that we're just going to ignore the Nick Birdie outing, so that's probably a good thing.
We shouldn't. Huh? I did that on purpose. I didn't want to talk about it because people are alarmed, and I think it's ridiculous. So let's see how he does after his next outing. We'll talk about it next Tuesday if it merits discussion. But, yeah, Nick Birdie threw 20 pitches, 5 were strikes, walked 4 guys, 4 earned runs, infinity ERA. Yeah, we get it. Let's leave it at that, and let's talk about it later.
Yep, no, I completely agree. But Parmelee, I mean, like you said, you got to get his bat in the lineup right now, and I know that some don't like the idea of playing the hot hand, but you know what? That's how you win games is by playing the guys who are hot, So, you brought up an interesting situation, and it's kind of like what's going on with the Nationals when, with Bryce Harper coming back. He's obviously going to play every day. Ryan Zimmerman's going to play every day. Anthony Rendon's going to play every day. They've got like 5 guys for 4 positions, and there's going to be days then that Denard Span gets a day off, or, Span may play center and Harper may move to left or right, or Zimmerman may actually still play a little third or first. I mean, that's just kind of what they're going to have to do. And the idea of Parmelee in center field is kind of fun because obviously in outfield, the Willingham, Parmelee, and Arcia is not going to be very good range-wise. But I just think, how often does that come into play in a game? Obviously it's going to. Range is a factor. Range is a huge thing. But I think they took a risk the other day with Gibson pitching, who's obviously a ground ball pitcher, and it didn't hurt. I mean, the only time it's going to hurt is on those days when a guy happens to hit a line drive or a fly ball that Parmelee misses by a step or two that a fold may have caught.
Right.
Those are the only plays that you're going to miss because, Parmalin's actually got a better arm, and, there's a lot of other things that he does as well. I think range is hugely important, so I'm not trying to minimize that, but the ball has to be hit kind of just right for it to actually make a difference in a ball game. So I think people overreact a little bit to that kind of stuff. And that, I'm maybe underreacting to it, but I don't think it's as big a deal as a lot of people want us to think it is. I would also say that in his last 10 games, he's 16 for 32 with 4 extra base hits. He's got a nice 12-17 OPS over those 10 games. So that kind of thing, regardless of what's happened. I mean, I hear so many people talking about, well, this is a guy that they made available to all the teams this spring. Yeah, they did. And you know what? He's come back from that stronger, and it may have been something that was a good wake-up call for him. And he's figured out something as a role player at this point. You go with it. I mean, forget what happened 3 months ago. He's earned the job, and he's earned the ability and the right to play every day pretty much right now.
Right. I think the thing that needs to be said, too, is it's really hard. It's possible, but it's hard to lose a game defensively in the outfield. It's easy to win a game with your bat. So it would have been really hard for Parmalee to lose a game by playing center field. I mean, unless a ball was hit to him and he didn't know where the wall was, and then he let it land. But one swing of the bat can take care of that offensively. So, me personally, if I'm filling a lineup, I probably don't put the guy in center field. But at the same time, in hindsight, it worked out just fine. So it's hard to really attack Gardy for that, even though it was a kind of a curious thing to do.
Sure, but I mean, again, you've got to give Fold a day off. I think everyone knows Sam Fold isn't an everyday player, although he's kind of forced to be. But at the same time, you've got to give him a day off, and then who are you going to put out in center field? I mean, Escobar is an option, but when your infielders are already kind of hurting and that kind of thing, and you need to give those guys a day off, I mean, you just got to make the call. And I mean, frankly, I think Parmalee's a little underrated defensively. Yep, he's not the fastest guy in the world, and we'll see that from time to time. But at the end of the day, he makes the plays and he throws to the right place, and he makes good, strong, accurate throws most of the time. It's just that couple plays here or there that may affect one play a week or 2 plays a week if you were to play there every day. Obviously, the more you saw him there, the more you'd probably see that exposed,
right?
Just because there'd be more options. But in one individual game, more than likely, you're not going to see anything.
Right. Hey, before we get to the next topic, I'm going to give you 40 seconds on the mic all by yourself. I'll be right back.
That sounds good. Well, we talked a little bit about a lot of things here. I do want to, just kind of encourage people. I did make the trip down to Cedar Rapids. I talked to a lot of people that are Twins Daily followers that went to Cedar Rapids this last weekend, and I've heard from others that have gone there other times. I know Jeremy, I think, is heading there in the next couple of weeks as well. But it's a lot of fun, and it sounds like, and I got accused of it a couple of times, wondering if I work for the Colonels with how much I promote them on the Twitter and things like that. But I was looking at it the other day, and the most expensive tickets, which are pretty much right behind home plate, behind the screen, just tremendous view, great seats, are $11. And if you sit in the right place, you could be sitting next to the Colonel's starting pitchers the next couple of days who are charting pitches. This weekend already, there were quite a few scouts in attendance. And as July goes along, there's going to be more and more scouts, and there may be some Twins execs and things like that in that same area. The next range, I think, is $9, and the next is $8. But then you look around the stadium, and you've got a picnic area. You've got a lot of ballpark concessions, but also other concessions, a Mexican thing. There's they get a lot of credit there for being having gluten-free options, and then the things they do between innings, which you see at other places too. But it's just a lot of fun, and you look at what happened yesterday with the tarp coming up, and certain people being kind of rolled over by the tarp's roll and things like that. It was it's kind of scary to see when you meet these people that just work so hard to make the game and the experience in Cedar Rapids so clean and looks so flawless and perfect, And I did see tonight that Jeff Johnson, the fantastic beat reporter for the Colonels for the Cedar Rapids Gazette, did post that GM Doug Nelson does have a broken collarbone from that experience yesterday of trying to put the tarp together. And anyone who's met Doug Nelson, nobody works harder before the game or during the game or after the game. So I like I said, I'm not trying to tell people what to do, but if you do get that chance or an opportunity to go down to Cedar Rapids, whether it's this year or next year, I'd just say take advantage of it. They just do everything right there.
Hey, when you were down there,
How was that? I'm tired.
that was great. Did you do the build your own burger thing at all when you were down there?
I didn't. My brother did. But the build your own burger, yeah, they had just a ton of options.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Jalapenos and onions and everything. Those things are awesome. They just got this year a new thing where you can get kind of grilled food as you order it. And twice, Steve Boer was there too, and I kind of went with him. He was recommending the grilled tenderloin. Oh my goodness, it was awesome. It was and you can't hear this or you can't see this on iTunes, but it was like this big into a big bun. You get cheese, you can get onions, you can get barbecue or lemon or whatever you want on it, grilled right there. It was unreal. So they've got a lot of different options for food and obviously beverages and craft brews and things like that. And so it's just a lot of they do things right. I mean, you've been there too. You must have done the Build a Burger.
Yeah, we did. I go down. Well, I mean, it was Beloit for a handful of years, but last year was the first year in Cedar Rapids. I go down there with my brothers. We're going down the week after the All-Star game that weekend, so we'll head down Saturday morning, catch Saturday, Sunday, and come back. But I mean, yeah, the concessions were fantastic, but it's like we're going down there. We're sitting the row behind the dugout Saturday, and then the first row behind home plate on Sunday. And I ordered all the tickets, so 6 tickets, and it came up to like $75. So, I mean, it's one of those things that like if the St. Paul Saints became a low A affiliate or an affiliate of the Twins, I would ditch my Twin season tickets in a heartbeat and get the minor league season tickets because it's a steal.
Go ahead.
It's a steal.
I think we need to talk about that too, just briefly. I know that we talked about it when Steve was on here a couple weeks ago, but I just don't get why the Twins are talking about it so much. They just shouldn't be talking about it, even if those plans are happening. I mean, not to throw words out there, but that's kind of tampering and stuff like that. They have a contract with the Colonels, and I hope that it continues for several more years. That said, I mean, obviously if it was in St. Paul, I'd be able to get there a little bit more, but yeah, I don't get why they talk about it so much.
Yeah, and I think it's probably been overblown from the perspective. I think St. Peter was asked a question and answered it honestly, and he's never shied away from that. But at the same time, I think it was overblown, and to be honest, I don't know how it happens logistically. I don't know that it works. But I'm just saying, if it were to happen, in my personal opinion, if I could drive 40 minutes to watch a minor league team for $8 and take my whole family for the price that it costs me to take one other person to Target Field, I mean, that's easy. That's easy for me.
Oh, absolutely. No, I completely agree.
We did have some other things to talk about Twins-wise, but let's just talk about one thing. Joe Mauer's obviously improved his batting average. I think he had dropped down to 254 at one point and had got back up with a double tonight to 271 and left tonight's game with an oblique injury. So that will bear some watching over the next couple days. Obviously, if Mauer is going to miss some time, hey, Chris Parmalee, you just earned yourself the split DH first base role with Kendry Morales. So, we'll see what happens there, but it's obviously something that bears watching.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't look good, and those oblique injuries are not good. Trevor Plouffe only missed 15 days with his. But we've also seen guys with oblique injuries miss a lot of time. Half years, 2 months, whatever it is, with that very same injury. So let's hope it's nothing. Let's hope it's just a a little soreness or something like that, because that would not be good to lose him right now because he's been hitting well for about 3 weeks now.
Right. And oblique injuries, I mean, it's anything that involves your core as a hitter, it's going to be a disaster if you try to swing with it. I mean, you talk about your oblique injury, which is it's lower, obviously. Arcia missed a lot of time with that intercostal muscle in his rib cage, which is a higher muscle. But anything like that is just it's hard because the swinging, the repetition of swinging, and just the torque that you try to provide that body, it's going to be interesting. Now, Joe Mauer could just hit it the opposite way and not really engage his core a whole lot. So I think, come on, Joe, toughen up.
Wow, that's football coach talk right there.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Obviously, Joe Mauer's, he played some football, so he's a tougher guy. Last week, if you listened, we made some All-Star game predictions. Seth had Brian Dozier on the All-Star vote, and I moved my paper, had Hughes and Perkins in. Yes?
That's what I said last week.
And I had Perkins in and Hughes a maybe and nobody else in. Would you like to change what you're thinking at all?
Yeah, I don't think Hughes is in, and Dozier's on the borderline of being on the vote list. I think Perkins is it.
Yep, that's what I would do too. Hughes has had a couple rough outings. Not terrible, not great. I think he's on the bubble. I think Dozier's even farther down on the bubble based on just the second basemen that are there. I'm taking Perkins at this point, and we'll go from there. Let's move on to the affiliates, and let's talk Rochester now. Rochester had a kind of a big game today. Before we get into the box score, I'm gonna flip the script on you here. I'm gonna drop it like it's hot. 1 second. Because you're going to talk about Wilkin Ramirez, so I should tell you that he got activated today. Nate Hansen, the local boy, was promoted, and making room for them on the roster, two of the bigger name prospects anyway. Josemiel Pinto was placed on the DL with a hip injury, and Trevor May was placed on the DL gasp with a right calf minor injury. He will be back. There's no need to worry. Everybody can calm themselves down. Check yourself before you wreck yourself, I think. Is that what Snoop Dogg would say?
Something like that.
Okay, so let's talk a little Rochester Red Wings baseball.
Let's do that. So we're looking at today. They played an afternoon game, and they beat Norfolk 15-11. Quite the scoring battle. But they got all kinds of offense. As you said, we got to talk about Wilkin Ramirez, who went 5 for 5 with his 17th double, and he stole his third base as well. That's not too terrible. You mentioned Nate Hansen. He was 3 for 4 with a double today. Chris Colabello, he's been heating up of late. He hit his 5th and 6th home runs of the year. He had 5 RBIs in the game. Chris Herman, he was 2 for 4 with a walk, double, a home run, and a stolen base. And Eric Ferris, who we've talked about tonight as well, was 2 for 5 with a walk. Chris Johnson wasn't that great. He gave up 4 runs on 6 hits and a walk in 5 innings. And then Edgar Ibarra had what you would call a rough outing. He got 1 out and gave up 5 runs on 3 hits and a walk. Of course, that 1 out he got was a strikeout, so that's pretty good. Ryan Presley went an inning and 2/3 and gave up 2 runs on 4 hits. And then Aaron Thompson threw 2 scoreless innings, which they really needed. So that's how the Red Wings fared today.
I'm going to just throw it just a random question. It's not real random, obviously. We talked about Mauer and his oblique. If he were to spend time on the disabled list, which one of those Red Wings do you bring up?
I think obviously it would be a 40-man roster decision, I would think. And, I think it'd have to be Colabello, to be honest with you. He's been hitting now for about 3 weeks. He's got the power. He can play multiple positions, even if not necessarily well. He can give Arcia a day off in right field. He can DH. He can pinch hit. Herman would be another option. I know people don't like hearing that. He's been doing just fine down in Rochester, and he has the added bonus that he can catch as well, but there's no sense in having him and Fryer up. So I think it'd be Colabello. Do you disagree or agree?
I won't disagree. I'm trying to pull up their roster. A guy like Wilkin Ramirez is not on the 40 man. Um, Eric Ferris not on the 40 man. Um, I think that would probably be the easy way to go, a right-handed bench bat. If you want to somehow platoon, you could go two righties versus a lefty. If you want to go Colabello Morales, you can go two lefties versus a righty. If you want to, go Morales and Parmalee. Um, so I think that would probably be the easy decision to make. Um, but gosh darn it, Mauer starts warming up and then he goes and turns and gets hurt. So that's too bad. But has there been anything else as far as the Rochester team has been doing? We've talked a lot about their pitching staff, and obviously Pino came up, hasn't pitched well. Meyer has really struggled lately. May had been pitching really well, and now he's on the DL. Then you have Chris Johnson, who hasn't been great. Last night when we were just talking, and I suggested maybe Logan Darnell could make a start, and you pointed out that he had one good game, but has not been great lately. And I guess that leaves Scott Diamond, who's in the rotation now and pitched well last night. But we talked earlier at length really about how there were so many options. If the Twins needed a guy, there were three of them on the 40 man, and Alex Meyer and Pino wasn't, and Diamond wasn't, but Diamond wasn't even really a guy that we talked about. And now they've all kind of hit a rough patch. Is that just bad luck? Is that they're getting up towards 100 innings and maybe their arms are getting tired? What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, I mean, it could be sort of the dead arm period type of phase, which everyone goes through at a different time. Like you said, Darnell threw a complete game shutout, I think, for Rochester on Saturday. So he's certainly capable of doing that. The thing I pointed out is in his two previous starts, I think he walked 4 and 5 batters. So that's pretty uncharacteristic for him, but that's just something to kind of watch. Chris Johnson's really been pretty much fine the whole year. Not so great this last time out, but I mean, any of these guys you could go with, and they're all, we had talked about, did Pino make his last start? And I started thinking about it, and you look at it, and last night I think he went 5 2/3 and gave up 4 runs, and he was taken out right after the home run to Salvador Perez. So if instead of that home run to Salvador Perez, it's a deep fly ball that Willingham happens to rob instead of just missing, that's 6 innings of 3-run balls. So I mean, that's as bad as it sounded, all of a sudden you look at that and it was 1 out away from a quality start. So I think for me right now, it's like, let's just get through the first half with Pino. He's been okay enough. He was great in the first one, bad in the second one, and okay in the third one. That, why not give him 2 or 3 more starts? And I just don't see that Darnell or Johnson right now gives them necessarily a better opportunity to win. And when it does get to the All-Star game in a week and a half, they're going to move the rotation around anyway. So I would just let those guys continue to go on the regular rotation and then let it kind of play out right after the All-Star break. And Trevor May, I think, fits into that more so because I think we both agree that the calf strain or whatever that is probably not a big issue.
Right. Not a big issue.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I'm excited to watch him in the Futures game and see how he does. And there's been a lot of discussion on the Twins Daily message boards about the importance of the Futures game versus the importance of the July 3rd, the July 8th start. For me, it's not going to be the difference in making the playoffs and not making the playoffs. And Pino has been, he might be a guy best suited for the bullpen, best suited for a long relief role. I think he would do great in that, and a spot start guy, just be a swingman. But at this point, give the guy a shot. And he hasn't been brutal in 3 straight outings. Like you said, good, bad, okay. He hasn't warranted a demotion. And even if he did, Deduno, let Deduno pitch. So I'm well with that idea of letting May here recover, letting him pitch in that Futures game, and then getting him up. and see what he has. And the thing is, we're going to have high expectations for Trevor May, like we had high expectations for Kyle Gibson last year, and he'll fall short. And eh, that's fine, but at the same time, let him do this, because it's going to be one of those things that, unless he gets absolutely drilled in the futures game, a lot of Twins fans are going to be really happy to see him. And I think that's important. It, maybe not more important than winning a game, but I don't think moving him up in place of Pino is going to be the difference of a win and a loss. So,
No, I agree.
it's something that we should continue to monitor. It gives a lot of people something to talk about, but we can go on from there.
But I mean, it's something we hear all the time. It's like people, and I get this all the time. People get so upset that the Twins, with say Fort Myers, every year they're pretty good, and they've got some guys that probably deserve to be promoted in early June. 2 months of solid performance, and we're talking about promoting them up. Whereas, let's let them win the first half. Let's let them win the first half of the season. Let's let them play in that All-Star game that they've earned the right to play in. Not at the detriment of anything else or development, but what does 2 weeks really matter?
Exactly.
When a guy's in Fort Myers. And you know what? Trevor May, Kenny Vargas, Jose Barros, they've kind of earned the right to play in this futures game, and that's kind of a neat thing. Let's not just take that away from them for one extra start. When the guy that he would be replacing is, not hurting them in any way at this point. So, I think what I'm saying is I agree with you, but I also believe that if these guys get these honors, let's let them perform in them. Let's let them participate in them. I guess that's my only other thought on that.
Right. Let's move over to the Rock Cats. You want to give a little overview on New Britain?
Yeah, Jason Wheeler got his second win with the Rockets. He gave up 3 runs on 5 hits. 2 of those were home runs and 2 walks. In 6 innings, he struck out 5. Mark Hamburger gave up 2 runs in 3 innings. He struck out 5 in those 2 innings, and then Matt Summers gave up a run in the ninth inning. But the Rockets scored 9 runs to beat Binghamton 9-6. Ronaldo Rodriguez just continues hitting. He was 2 for 3 with a walk. His 24th double. Aaron Hicks was actually 2 for 3 with a walk. Eddie Rosario had a first inning home run. His second, he was 1 for 3 with 2 walks. And Mike Kwasnicka, who's been on fire the last month or so, he had his 6th home run in the game as well. But Rosario got that home run in the first inning that I think broke like an 0 for 25 stretch that saw his numbers drop dramatically.
So I find it interesting that Hamburger pitched in relief when the word has been that he's going to get an opportunity to be a starter for the rest of the year.
And when he did make his start, he did pretty well.
So any insight on that?
No, I mean, I really don't have anything. And when I was gone for a week, I didn't have a chance to, really follow things quite as closely as when I'm just here doing nothing. But I mean, I'm a little bit surprised. But I think at the end of the day, his role as a potential Twin is going to be in the bullpen.
Right.
But he did do a nice job last year with the St. Paul Saints and as a full season starter there. So it doesn't. I mean, I'd see no harm in giving him that opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, I liked it. I like the fact that they were going to put him in the rotation, unless they have someone better to add to the rotation. I mean, you're going to need the 5 guys, and he was currently one of the 5. So what gives? You know what I mean?
Right. But I was just surprised. I think he started on like Thursday or Friday, and he's already, kind of back in the bullpen. So I don't know. Maybe it's one of those things where he's at this point kind of being in a role where he's a swingman himself and getting some starts and some bullpen and wherever it kind of fits, kind of what Pino did at the beginning of the year in Rochester.
Absolutely. Do we want to say anything more about New Britain? I don't know that there's a lot of stuff going on there. Obviously, Hicks is there, Rosario's there. Rosario was cold. But other guys, Ronaldo Rodriguez hit 2 home runs yesterday. Is there more to talk about? I don't even know that they made a single transaction over the last 7 days.
No, It'll be interesting to see what happens there. It's one of those things where obviously Reynaldo Rodriguez was brought back this year, moved to the outfield, and he's a guy that's really a minor league free agent. He's 29-ish or whatever. Um, but he's playing so well that at some point you have to consider him possibly moving up to Rochester, don't you? I mean, I get that he's not a cornerstone type of guy, but when the guy's hitting like he is down there, power, playing decent defense, batting average, everything. At some point, you'd like to see him maybe get an opportunity to at least go to AAA too.
Right. And he was a AAA guy. I want to say in 2012 he played in AAA before signing up with the Twins and being just a double A guy last year. So, um, it's hard to say though because it's all how guys fall in the organizational ladder, and he got kind of squeezed out of first base, being a primary first baseman last year, and then they bring Brad Nelson in, and Vargas moves up, and all of a sudden he's playing in the outfield. So, um, you know, what do you do with him? He's an organizational. He's a filler, and they're not gonna change their plans to make a guy that's a filler move up one spot in the pecking order. When if they needed him, he's a phone call away, whether he's in New Britain or Rochester.
Yeah, I guess the other thing is Kenneth Vargas is down to 307 at this point, which of course is still terrific and better than we would have thought. Let's just hypothetical this situation. What if Joe Mauer does go on the DL? Is there any possibility that they'd bring Vargas up to split time with Morales and Parmalee at first base?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do
They
you think
brought
they would?
Polanco up, so there's absolutely a possibility.
The only reason I would disagree with that is because of the way Parmalee's playing right now. He's going to be in the lineup, and Morales is obviously going to be in the lineup, and the fact that it's not going to be a 4 or 5 day thing. If I mean, I hate to even speculate this, but if Mauer were to need the 15-day disable list, it would be a 15-day thing as opposed to a 4-day thing. You don't want him to be on this stretch and not play. You know
Yeah,
what I
but
mean?
at the same time, Mauer is a fixture at first base. Parmalee's getting at bats every day with Mauer at first base, right?
Right.
So if Mauer's out, then Morales becomes your first baseman or Parmalee becomes your first baseman. But both of those guys are getting at bats. Mauer's getting his plate appearance every single plate appearance that's available. So you can bring Vargas up. You don't necessarily have to play him every day, but you've just created a number of plate appearances that are available that weren't before. Whether Parmalee gets all of those, that still creates a huge amount of plate appearances that Mauer had. Do I
Yeah.
think they'll bring Vargas up? Absolutely not. Do I think it's a possibility based on what's happened over the last week? Yeah. I mean, they brought Polanco up. There's really no reason to rule anything out at this point.
And if they did, I would see him playing DH, and I think Morales would play first base, and
Right.
Parmley would continue to play where he has been playing, because I don't think anyone in the organization believes that Kenneth Vargas can play first base. Um, I would also say that I just went on this rant about 5 minutes ago about how let's not make a big deal about a week or two or one start or whatever when a player has earned the right to participate in the futures game. And if the Twins called up Vargas right now, he obviously would not be able to play in the futures game, which, again, not a big deal. But, obviously the bigger concern overall is what's best for his overall development.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it would happen, but I think it would at least warrant a discussion. I think the discussion would be like,
Yep.
well, why don't we just bring Colabello up? He's at AAA and he's got the same deal. Yeah, bring him up.
Yeah.
He can sit on the bench and not be any worse for the wear. All right, let's move over to Fort Myers now. We're getting behind the schedule. We're now 10 minutes behind. Gosh darn it.
It's not bad, actually.
Tell me about the Miracle.
The Miracle lost tonight to Bradenton 5-4. Lance Ray hit his second home run. He was 2 for 4. Travis Harrison was 1 for 3 with a walk in his 21st double. B.J. Hermson again had a rough one. He went just 2 innings and gave up 3 runs on 5 hits and 4 walks in 1 inning. And struck out 1 in 2 innings. Alex Wimmers came on and he gave up 2 runs on 5 hits in 6 innings. So good to see Wimmers pitching much better. BJ Hermson just kind of can't find it at this point. And it's, speaking of obliques, it was his oblique injury that's kind of started the struggles that he had, since being the 2012 minor league pitcher of the year. As soon as he went to big league camp and he overexerted a little bit and sprained that, or strained, or whatever you do with an oblique, he just hasn't been able to stay, to get things going. So and that's continuing this year, even with the demotion and time at extended spring training, and then time now with Fort Myers. It's not looking so good. It's unfortunate too.
I think you like to look at things very optimistically. Um,
Yeah.
I'm not so much that type of guy. And BJ Hermson, I think, has been given every opportunity to have a career with the Twins, but there's not anybody looking at it right now and thinking, yeah, he still got a shot. So, Brett Lee was activated yesterday, pitched out of the bullpen, as a matter of fact. Um, they made a couple of moves with Polanco coming back. They activated Brett Lee. They sent Rafael Valero back to the GCL and put Adderley Mejia on the DL. Um, Brett Lee's going to take a spot in that rotation, and obviously, if Berrios were to move up, that's fine. Hermson can stick around for a while, but now we have Wimmers, who's looking like he could maybe re-earn a spot in that rotation. Um, I'm sure that Hermson's deal. I'm not going to look it up, but I think he got $700,000 to sign a professional contract, getting scholarship money. He passed up an opportunity to go to Oregon State. That money's still there, and maybe it's time for him to cash in on that, make the call to the commissioner's office, and enroll in classes somewhere. It's just my take, just my hot take.
And that might be what happens. From the Twins' perspective, I think that's probably the right thing for them to do, is to let him go. From his perspective, I wouldn't just immediately enroll. And there's no reason for him to give up the dream at this point if there's another organization willing to give him an opportunity. And I don't know that there would be, but like you said, that college money is going to be there,
Right.
and there's no. It'll be there whenever. I just think, like you said, the Twins have given him every opportunity.
Right. He might be pitching down the stretch in St. Paul.
It's certainly possible.
I think he was a West Des Moines high school guy, so there's probably a team in that league that's closer to a Des Moines, but I think maybe Des Moines, as a matter of fact.
No, but Sioux Falls and Sioux City have teams.
So, yeah, he'll get a shot. If all else fails, maybe Brandon Warren can give him a call. He can pitch on his town ball team.
There you go.
Done. Okay. We talked at length about Cedar Rapids, so let's move on.
Just a couple things on Fort Myers, Jeremy. Since Polanco moved back down, and actually the game before Jorge Polanco moved up to the Twins, he's been playing second base. Nico Goodrum's been playing short, and Travis Harrison has been playing third base, which has allowed Lance Ray and Nate Roberts to get some time in left field. And, of course, last night in his third game, Nate Roberts was hurt again. I've kind of tried to get a report, and right now there's just nothing conclusive at this time. I don't think anyone knows what's wrong or what the issue will be, or if it'll be a long-term thing or short-term thing or anything like that. But I guess my question for you is, do you think that the Miracle got basically to the second half and said, okay, Polanco's had the first half at shortstop, he had 25 errors, whatever it is, let's move him back to second? Or do you think it was the plan all along to have Polanco play short the first half, Goodrum play short the second half with Polanco playing second base? That's the feel I kind of get for it. Like they had a plan that, Goodrum played third base the entire first half, and Harrison played left field. But those guys still, they want to keep their versatility. So I'm guessing it's an intentional thing as opposed to anything else. Or it could just be that Mejia hurt his wrist and they need to do that for right now.
See, and that's funny because I was thinking the exact same thing. Halfway through the year, all of a sudden there's this giant shift. But then I guess for me it was, well, why would you have Harrison work so hard at third base and then move him to left field and have him play a half year at left field and then move him back to third base? And it's like, well, I guess maybe if he hasn't been doing it, it makes sense that that's what happened. I guess maybe is part of it. Well, Goodrum will need to be added to the 40 man. Does he have a lot more value as a shortstop than as a third baseman? Do you want to see if he can do that before you decide if you want to add him? You know, I believe he led all of the minor leagues in like assists per game.
Yep.
But the whole thing is just, it's weird. And obviously the thing that needs to be discussed at some point is Levi Michaels having a really good year playing second base. When he comes back, does he become the second baseman and Polanco just goes to Double A?
Yeah, I mean that's the possibility. One of the things, and this weekend at Cedar Rapids, a lot of people were talking about Polanco. Obviously, that's kind of a message you start telling your guys in Cedar Rapids is, don't expect it to happen, but think about it. Polanco was here 1 year ago. But
Right.
Again, up in the press box, a lot of people were talking about, are they going to send him back down to Fort Myers? Or who's the shortstop at New Britain? And I was sitting there thinking, I think the main shortstop at New Britain right now is Brad Boyer. Is that right?
They don't have a shortstop on their roster. It's been
Right.
I think Thomas has been doing a little bit. I think Boyer's been doing a little bit.
And so, I mean, I think that was a legitimate possibility. And I do think, like you said, maybe if Michael can come back in the next few weeks, maybe that's the timing of Polanco moving up to New Britain. But I also think, it doesn't hurt for him to spend a half a year at second base either. I did hear a podcast, a Twins-related podcast this weekend, that pointed out that the reason that Goodrum had moved to third base was that he was already way too big to play third base or to play shortstop, and I don't think that's true. I think they really truly want to give Polanco every chance to play shortstop, and I think a lot of people think that Goodrum's going to get too big to play shortstop, but at this point he hasn't, and honestly, from everything I've seen, I think Goodrum's a better shortstop than Polanco right now. And I think what they're trying to do is, I think it's important to everyone to have versatility. I mean, we may say, okay, let's move Polanco over to shortstop because Brian Dozier is going to be the second baseman for the Twins for the next 6 to 8 years or whatever. But we don't know what's going to happen in 2 years when Polanco is ready for everyday time. So I really think giving him everyday reps at second base and shortstop is important. Likewise, I think as long as Goodrum can play shortstop defensively, I'd give him every opportunity to play there as well. So I think giving him a half a year there and keeping him fresh there is a good thing. While I also don't think it hurts for him to learn that other position so that if he does ever have to move there or the Twins have a need there and he's the guy that's ready, he can do that. And at the same time, I mean, kind of just going along that pattern, I don't think a lot of people think that Travis Harrison can be a everyday major league third baseman, and that's why they moved him to outfield. But again, we see the value, and we've seen it this year with the Twins, of having guys that can play multiple positions. And if Harrison can play just an adequate third base so he could fill in for someone for a game here or there or a week at a time or something like that, that's important, even if he's primarily playing left field. So I guess I just thought it was an interesting talker. Maybe those that are listening disagree, but I think it's something to note of how this plays out over the rest of the year, because Adelin Mejia is on the DL right now, and he can kind of play any of those positions.
And we actually have a question that we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, so you kind of poo-pooed all over that one.
Oops. Sorry.
We'll talk more. How about we come back to that? I mean, we could talk about now. Let's come back to that because it kind of relates to multiple people, multiple players, multiple positions at multiple levels. So, why don't you give us the rundown of the E-Town game tonight?
All right, well, real quick, I'm just going to mention we've already talked about Cedar Rapids. Tonight they're in Wisconsin and Appleton. They got through 5.5 innings, and Aaron Slager's threw 5 shutout innings, striking out 3, and then they went into a rain delay. I don't know if they've started playing again or not.
I saw that it was
Yep.
They did?
Nope. Yep, they're continuing. They're through 7 innings, and Brandon Bixler actually has thrown 2 scoreless innings as well. Not much offense, just 2 hits, singles by Zach Granite and Jason Kanzler so far. For not too much offense in that game at this point, 0-0 with Appleton or with Wisconsin and Cedar Rapids. But in Elizabethton, the E-Twins lost 7-4 to Johnson. Steven Gonsalves started. He went 4 innings and gave up 4 runs, 3 of them earned on 7 hits and 2 walks. He began the game by giving up just an unearned run through the first 4 innings, and then he faced 3 batters in the top of the 5th inning, and all 3 came around to score when Cameron Boozer came in. Boozer was charged with no runs on 3 hits over those 3 scoreless innings, but he allowed a couple of those inherited runners to score. And then Randy LeBlanc came in. He gave up 3 runs on 2 hits and a walk in the final inning. Offensively, not a lot to talk about. Dutch Deol, however you say that, he was 2 for 3 with a walk. And Nick Gordon was 1 for 5 in the game. He's hitting .313, so he had his little mini slump after his 4 for 5 debut. But he's hitting .313, which is pretty good. He stole his third base. He did commit 2 errors, an error. In the game, a throwing error, but he's only got 2 errors so far at shortstop, which is pretty impressive. There's a couple of catchers that have more errors than he's got at short. So,
did Max Murphy play tonight?
He did. He had 1 more hit, and he was 1 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. So when he puts the ball in play, he's pretty good because, as you wrote about at Twins Daily last night, he was max effort yesterday.
Yeah, he was like, I think he had 2 triples, a double, a home run, 2 walks. He was like 8 for 10 or 7 for 9 on the day in the doubleheader, so he was a stud. How about Tanner English? Did he play?
Tanner English did not play tonight.
He followed me on Twitter this morning, so he's getting the day off.
That's probably why.
It's a big day for him.
Yeah, I'm sure. No, they had just kind of an interesting lineup, which I think is the way to do it for these guys, especially those guys that are coming off the college season. Keep them interested and yet keep them playing. Now, Jeremiah Pineda, who played last year in Cedar Rapids and started this year in Cedar Rapids, he got hurt, so I don't know if he's on a rehab or not, but he was 0 for 5 tonight with 4 strikeouts and is hitting .195. Danny Valencia is the guy that the Twins traded in order to get Pinedas, or vice versa. He, of course, is now playing second base for the Royals tonight and has a double against Brian Dunsing. Fun stuff.
Something about we could never be Royals. It's not in our blood.
Got it.
Right? The song?
I have no idea.
The song?
I don't know. I'm old.
You know the song Royals by Lorde?
No. I don't listen to cool stuff unless my daughter listens to it. Then I do.
If there's anybody out there that ever listens to this podcast that also hasn't heard that song, let me know, because I think Seth might be the only person in the history of the planet that doesn't know the song Royals.
Sorry.
Seriously, you've never heard that song?
I don't know. Maybe I have. Sing it for us, and I'll let you know.
I can't sing. Anywho. Before we move on from E-Town, John Curtis, who I believe was a 6th round draft pick, he was closing for Texas. He signed and is reporting. Curtis only played like a year or 2 years at Texas. He graduated in 3 years as a double major. Smart dude, signed for slot, and my belief is that he'll probably get an opportunity at some point to start. I don't know if that's going to happen this year, obviously, because of the the scheduling with the being in the College World Series. But I think he's going to get a chance to start at some point. Fastball slider guy. And let's move over to the Gulf Coast League Twins.
Well, the only other point I'd make about Curtis signing their 6th round pick is that means that they've now signed their first 17 draft picks this year, which, I mean, I know every team really wants to sign all of their top 10 and fill from there, but I mean, to sign your top 17 is pretty impressive. As for the GCL Twins, they lost to this afternoon to the Rays, 7-8. Morris Minier, he was 3 for 4. He's now hitting .407. Wouldn't be surprised if he moves up to Elizabethton at some point. Manuel Guzman was 3 for 5. Reynes Silva was 2 for 5. Logan Wade actually had a couple hits. He was 2 for 5 in his rehab, and he's now hitting 156. He actually could go back up to Cedar Rapids at some point too. On the mound, Alexis Tapia started, gave up 2 runs on 7 hits over 4 innings, no walks, 3 strikeouts. Josh Geyer came in, went an inning and 2/3 and gave up 3 runs on 3 hits and 2 walks. He struck out 3. Miles Nordgren gave up 3 unearned runs on 4 hits and a walk in an inning and a third. And then Trevor Hildenberger pitched a scoreless final inning. Yeah, I mean, just a lot of guys getting their initial innings in here and there. If there's college guys, they're basically, the relievers are pitching maybe every fourth or fifth day just to get an inning or two here and there. Some of the guys from the smaller colleges that may have been done a little bit earlier, they're actually getting some starts, and but they're definitely more concerned about just getting them some experience than how they're doing. But it is good to see Minier hitting well. He was their big July bonus baby two summers ago. Played all right last year in the GCL. Showed good power, which I think is what he's known for. This year he's moved out into the outfield, but also played some first base after having shoulder surgery this offseason. So it really is just good to see that he's back out there. I think that's the key there. Lewin Diaz was their big signing last year. He's still in the Dominican Summer League. And does that bring us to the next topic, or do you have any other GCL topics?
That was a great segue, Seth.
You like that?
Yeah, I was wondering if that's where you were going with it, and
I was.
that was good. Next time we won't talk about it. We'll just segue into the next thing. We had one question about international free agency. That's the big deal tomorrow, July 2nd, excuse me. Essentially how it works is that deals can become official tomorrow morning, and I think it's like 9 Eastern, so 8 Central. To be honest, though, these deals are done, and they've been done for a long time. They'll just fax in the paperwork tomorrow morning. If you believe what you read, you'll see that the Yankees seem to be the team that has deals with all these top prospects. And it's hard because what happens is the way that the system is set up, you get a finite amount of money, and how it's working is you're working like 2 years in advance. So you're making deals with 14-year-olds, and then they're not showcasing like they would if they didn't have a deal. And so the Yankees are going to allegedly blow their signing pool out of the water, spend $15 million, pay a bunch of tax, and get potentially 10 of Baseball America's top 30 prospects in this period. The Twins have, I want to say it's the 5th most money. All teams get a standard $700,000, and then you get slots, which you can trade. The Twins don't seem interested in trading. The one name that they've been tied to, and Seth and I talked about how to pronounce his name, and there's no who really knows. It's a brother of Michael Anoa, who signed for a ton of money with the A's a handful of years back. It kind of looks like Oscar with an H and a UA at the end. Seth, I think, said maybe Huskar, so I think that's what we should go with because I was thinking Hosker. So we're going to go with Huskar Anoa. And he's a guy that looked really good earlier in the period and was looking for a couple $1 million, and then teams started watching him, and then he just didn't seem to do what teams maybe thought he was capable of. So he's one of those guys that you could maybe buy low on and reap some benefits. At this point, if I was a betting guy, I would say that the Twins probably don't have a deal done with him. But and I'm basing that on a couple different things, but maybe he signs with the Twins for $800,000, $900,000. But then again, maybe he waits. And there was a guy, a Korean kid that the Twins were in on last year that kept wanting, he wanted more and really kind of held out and eventually got that money from the Cubs and is pitching pretty well now in the Midwest League. So I don't know what Anoa's going to do, but I don't expect to see his name come across the ticker with the Twins name next to it. Not tomorrow. Um, of course, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. The only other name that's been connected to the Twins, and this was by Baseball America in their forecast today, was a Dominican outfielder by the name of Giancarlos Arias. Uh, didn't find much on him. He turned 16 in January, and you know that that's all I really know about him. Doogie Wolfson's reported a number of times that this is going to be a different year for the Twins because they don't anticipate signing anybody for over $1 million. They think they're going to get good depth because I think they have over $3 million. So if you're signing guys for $500,000, $600,000, you can get a handful of pretty solid prospects. So I would anticipate, I guess, based on last year when Diaz and Tapia's names didn't really come over the wire officially. I'm not going to just sit in front of my computer tomorrow and wait for names. I'm curious.
Yeah, you will.
I don't know that I will. Maybe I will. I'm curious to see if there's some Cubans that are going to be subjected to the signing bonus rules. So I'm curious to see if the Twins kind of wait in the weeds and go after some of those guys. I don't have names, to attach to it, but I'm curious to see if maybe they play this differently because there's a lot of teams that are going to, blow through their pools. Essentially, it's just going to lead to the next collective bargaining agreement, including an international draft, which needs to happen anyway. And I know people don't like that idea, but it's bound to happen. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how this plays out. But I don't anticipate any big news rolling around tomorrow as it pertains to the Twins.
It's fun to get the guys like Miguel Sano or Minier for 1.5 million, or Lewin Diaz, I think got $1.5 million or so last year. But you look at Inoa, his brother, Michael Inoa. I was just looking him up recently. He's moved to the bullpen in high Class A. Now, he signed for like $4.5 million about 5 or 6 years ago, and he's in high Class A. He's already had Tommy John surgery maybe 3 years ago. He's 6'7", he's 220, he throws pretty hard, but right now his ERA is 7.8 at Stockton in the California League.
And he's on the 40.
And he's been on the 40-man roster for 2 years already. In his last 3 outings and 4 innings, he's given up 10 runs on 12 hits. So, I mean, not that you want to shy away from the big dollar ones, because I think we like to think Miguel Sano is going to turn out pretty good, and the Twins gave him $3.15 million. We don't know what's going to happen with Diaz or Minier or other guys, but you look at guys like Polanco signed for about $750,000. That's what Kepler got. Lewis Thorpe got $500,000. Some of these guys that are in the DSL and maybe just getting a chance in the GCL may have signed for like $10,000 or something real low, or $100,000. I mean, what did Oswaldo Arcia sign for? $80,000, something like that.
Yep.
I mean, it's fun to guess which 16-year-old is going to become a future star, but it's so hard to predict. As hard as the draft is to predict, selecting players out of the Dominican or Venezuela or Australia or Europe or any of those places is even like 10 times harder. So part of me is just like, instead of spending $3 million or whatever the number is on 2 or 3 players, spend $100,000 on 30. I mean, I know that's not realistic, but spread the wealth, give it to a bunch of guys, and just take your chances that if you have 30 guys, or you'd say 10, maybe 2 of them make it to the big leagues, instead of taking your chances on 1 or 2 with the hope that 1 or 2 of them might. I mean, you got to fill rosters and do all of that too. So I guess I don't have a problem if they don't go out and sign the quote unquote big names, because if you look back at the history of even Baseball America's top 30s each year of international signings, do maybe 4 or 5 of them become major leaguers every year? I mean, it's just so hard to predict. And I'm
Right.
not going to pretend I know anything about those individual players.
Right. I'm wondering if you're suggesting spreading it out to 30 different guys. Not that that's realistic, but
Right.
I'm curious to see if maybe they have a greater presence in Australia. I mean, they've always had a presence, but maybe they spend a little bit more money, sign a couple of guys. They only signed one guy from Australia last year. Um, maybe they try to take more of a European approach. Maybe they actually they signed two guys. They signed Jack Barry and Ruarva Kirk, but maybe they bring in some more Australians. You could sign a handful of Australians, or maybe they head to Europe, like Germany or wherever they want to go. Maybe they just bring in more guys overall. Um, the hard thing is if you do that, especially the non-Caribbean, you don't go to Venezuela, you don't go to the Dominican, you can't put those guys anywhere but the GCL. So Callum Pierce, I think he was South African. Um, you have to put him in the GCL next year. So
Yeah.
um, there's a lot of things that just figure into that because you only have so many places, 35 spots on your Gulf Coast League team, and that's where you're going to put your high school draft picks. Um, there's just a lot that goes into it. So you could really make 3 points, whatever it is, $1 million go a long way. Um, if there's guys you want. The hard thing is these deals were cut months, if not years ago. Um, Kylie McDaniel, if you visited his site um, on Scout.com, he said there's guys that I didn't see because they already had deals, and then when I saw them, they were already bad deals, and they weren't even official yet. But teams reach agreements with kids at 14, and if they're going to get $500,000-$600,000 at 14, well, all of a sudden now they're 16 and they haven't improved at all. You can't renege on those deals, because it's basically through these trainers, and there's a handful of them. There's probably more than a handful, but there's the really well-known trainers. Well, if you tell a guy that you're going to give his client $600,000 at 14, and then you back out, you don't ever get any of those guys again. So it's very political. It's a completely different thing, and that's why I think we have to go towards a draft. And I think we'll see that as soon as the next CBA gets hammered out. Now that it's 10:38, though, why don't we hit some questions, because we do have quite a few of them. I'll read them off, Seth. You can answer as you seem to whatever you believe in.
Okay.
This one's from Kurt1965. This was posted on Twins Daily. Wondering about the differences between AA and AAA. He says it seems like all the hitting prospects are at AA, while the next call-ups for the pitching staffs are at AAA. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting question, and I think that's kind of cyclical. There are individuals that could get called up from AA, but a lot of the time you'd like to see them master AAA. For me, AA is where the prospects are. AA is where you've got guys that have tremendous tools and are really close. A guy like the Red Sox just called up Mookie Betts. They had started him in AA. He went up to AAA for about a week or 10 days, and then they called him up. But AA is where you got those types that could move quickly. That's, to me, you got guys that throw hard. When you get to AAA, you've got mostly on those rosters guys that have either played in the big leagues and are trying to get back there, and maybe they're 29 or 35 or that kind of thing. And you've got pitchers who may not have your overpowering stuff, maybe your Johan Pino stuff, who top out at 90 or 88 or things like that, or they don't have quite the breaking balls, and there's a reason that they're close but not quite there. So it's a good league because you're going to get some guys that are crafty. You're going to get the guys that have decent off-speed pitch and know how to work younger hitters. And I think At Double A, they're all young, and they're trying to just overpower people and things like that. So I think it's two very different things. I think we always hear that Double A, the jump to Double A, is the hardest in the minor leagues. But I think that it's valuable to get that time in Triple A because you're going to play against a completely different type of player. And then in the big leagues, you're going to have both. You're going to have the flamethrowers, but then you're going to have the crafty guys. So I don't think it hurts players to go through both of those levels.
Yeah, I think you hit that one right on the head. Next question is from MN Sports 255. This is also posted at Twins Daily. He says, I know it's several years away, but what do the Twins plan on doing with Danny Santana, Jorge Polanco, Eddie Rosario, Nick Gordon, and Byron Buxton when they're all MLB ready? We're looking at 5 top prospects / young players who are limited to shortstop or center field. Would they be looking to trade some of those guys, or would they try to transition a few of them to new positions?
Well, if they all turn out, which is still a question mark with any prospect until they actually make it, um, they'll find places for him. I mean, Danny Santana's probably a shortstop, and he could be ready. I mean, he's almost basically ready now. Jorge Polanco's probably a year or two away, and he could be a shortstop or second base. We talked about that earlier. And if he's that good, you'll make room for him with any of these guys. Eddie Rosario is a backup plan maybe at second, but he's a terrific outfielder, very good outfielder. Not necessarily blazing speed like you'd typically see with a center fielder, but he can play center, and he's got a very good, strong, accurate arm too. So he's an outfielder who can play second base. He doesn't have to play center field. He can play left. For the WBC Puerto Rico team last year, he played left field and did a great job out there. So I mean, he could play left, center, or right. Buxton, obviously, he's going to play center. Nick Gordon, if he gets to that point in 4 or 5 years, he's probably going to be elite, and we hope he's going to be elite, and he's the type that you make room for him. So, I mean, he probably ends up at short. But, I mean, you mentioned Santana, who's ready now, Polanco, who's probably 2 years out, Eddie Rosario, who could be ready early next year, Nick Gordon, who might be 5 years, and Byron Buxton, who, because of missing a half a season already, probably looks to be ready more early to mid next year. Also with Sano in that picture, and there's other guys in that picture. So, like I said, you just let them keep playing in the minor leagues and moving up as appropriate, and letting them play some different positions. Unless you're Byron Buxton, there's value in playing different positions, and I think they'll let them do that. I know I'm kind of rambling, but there's no concise, clear answer for how this can play out. And a lot of these guys that you mentioned are really good athletes, so having them transition to a different position is probably not quite so bad.
Right. And I would agree with that. I mean, you look at teams like the Diamondbacks, who came into this year with 3 really good shortstop prospects, and you pick the guy that wins the job. You keep the other guys down, and then call them up as needed. And,
Right.
I think Buxton's the name that kind of floats to the top there. When Byron Buxton's ready, he's the everyday center fielder. At that point, Dozier's in his arbitration. He'll be in arbitration. Maybe he has a long-term deal. But then Santana, Polanco, Rosario, Gordon, like you said with Rosario, he could be a left fielder, and we've talked about that a lot. Nick Gordon's far away, so then really you're looking at Danny Santana and Jorge Polanco. Jorge Polanco, yeah, he played with the Twins, but he's a high A guy. So Santana plays short, and then we're talking in 2016. Are these guys ready? By then, some of those guys have played themselves away from being a prospect. I mean, we could look 3 years ago and said, well, what are the Twins going to do when they have Hicks and Morales and Joe Benson already at the same time? They got 3 center fielders.
Right.
Well, it turns out.
Why would you draft Byron Buxton?
Right. They have 0 center fielders. Is actually what
Right.
they have. So, I think things are a little misconstrued because we've seen Santana have success. We've seen Polanco have success. We're promised success from Byron Buxton. And Eddie Rosario, well, why wouldn't he get it done? Nick Gordon, he was the first-round pick, so of course he's going to be good. If you have 20 guys that are able to play, then yeah, you look at that and say, well, we can't get you all on the field. let's spin you for somebody that can help us in the pitching staff. And that's a problem. That's a great problem to have.
As you mentioned that, and I kind of brought up, well, why would you draft Byron Buxton when you need pitching and you've already got Hicks and Benson and all these guys, Revere, Span, whoever it was. We talk about drafting the best player available. And I'd ask those that are listening, if anyone's still listening, this question. What is your first reaction when somebody says, what if the Twins would have drafted Mike Trout that year instead of Kyle Gibson with the 22nd overall pick? And I'll just to pause then for a second to let people kind of think about that. But I would think most people would say, just imagine how good Mike Trout would be and would have been the last couple of years in the middle of the Twins lineup and stealing bases and playing great defense. My initial reaction when I hear that is, can you imagine how much Twins fans would have bashed that pick at the time if the Twins would have taken Byron Buxton, and I'm sorry, if they would have taken Mike Trout, an outfielder from a school in the north, out of high school, instead of a college pitcher who had a good track record and that kind of stuff. I think the Twins would have been completely bashed, and at the end of the day would have looked good because of just what you said, Jeremy, and that's, you don't know what's going to happen 3 years down the line or 5 years down the line. Danny Santana may have a 2-year window where he's kind of the guy at shortstop. And then at that point, Jorge Polanco may be ready to move over there or not. And Brian Dozier may be ready to move on to free agency or, that type of a situation. And maybe Polanco's ready at second, so Santana stays at short. And maybe Rosario ended up being a good second baseman, so Santana has to be in center and Polanco's at short, Rosario's at second. It's just impossible to try to predict, and it's fun, but it's really hard to do. There's no way to do it.
See, now, if the Twins would have drafted Mike Trout, they probably would just be winning the World Series now because of how good he is. They would have never had the opportunity to draft any other studs because they'd be drafting at the end of the first round.
So they did it on purpose.
Right. They tanked.
Got it. Yeah.
I think they sucked for Buck is what happened.
There you go.
There it is. Okay.
Just like the Vikings tanked for Teddy last year, right?
Sometimes you just have to. All Day with UK asks you on Twitter, sticking with promotions, how long do you think it will be until we see Jorge Polanco move to AA? We've kind of already touched on this one.
Yeah, we touched on that earlier, and I kind of think, and you brought it up actually, Jeremy, when Mejia comes off the DL, or particularly when Levi Michael comes off the DL, that might be a good transition time for Polanco to move up. Again, we saw a mature kid who's only 20. Did he just turn 21 maybe, or he's about to turn 21? But
21.
He's close. He's one of those guys that you can't just look at the numbers. You have to realize the maturity, the ability for him to put the bat on the ball without striking out, and then his ability to play a couple of positions. I think he's ready, and I think that can happen pretty quickly.
Question from All Day with 2K again. Do you see Gonsalves, Murphy, or English getting to Cedar Rapids at some point this season?
It's certainly possible. I think we expected Gonsalves to be up there already, and I honestly think there was a chance that if Lewis Thorpe would have had a bad start on Friday, there was a chance that he could have been maybe flip-flopped with Gonsalves and gone back to Elizabethton, which would not have hurt his development at all. In fact, it may have been good for him long term, but he pitched great on Friday, and he should stay in that rotation. But, I talked to Jake a little bit about it. Right now, they're going to go with a 5-man rotation, he thought, through probably July, with off days and then the All-Star game day off that everyone gets. They seem to think that they'll be able to go with 5 starters for like the next month. But I would not be surprised if Gonsalves does get a chance at some point. He had kind of an off inning tonight, and if he can get to the point where he can throw 5-6 good innings at Elizabethton consistently, I would expect him to move up. As far as Max Murphy or is it Tanner English, I would say maybe. You got to look at what Pinedas is doing, and he was already at Cedar Rapids. These are ninth and 11 round picks, so they're not your top types of picks. And the Colonels right now have an outfield that includes Zach Granite, who I think they really like as an on base guy. Jason Kanzler as a speed defense, a little bit of power guy, and John Murphy's their right fielder right now. Now they don't have much outfield depth at this time. Christensen can play out there, so that might be an opportunity, but either way, they're going to make sure that all of those guys get at bats every day, and that's more important than what level they're getting at for a 2-month stretch here at the end of the season. Right. So I kind of think Murphy and English will probably both stay in Cedar Rapids. I mean, we'll stay in Elizabethton.
Yeah. I guess it's interesting because what I heard was that someone will be moving up to Cedar Rapids in the next week. There's no name yet, but that's kind of the word that's floating around, is that someone's going from E-Town to Cedar Rapids in the next week. Ironically, though, which kind of supports what you said, the Cedar Rapids rotation, based on just their game notes, is set through Cole Stewart on Saturday, which would be him pitching on 4 days rest. Is that the best thing for his development? If you want to do the six-man rotation, that's something that can be talked about too.
Yeah.
As far as those outfielders go, the thing that's weird is that in the past, those college guys have not moved up. A guy like Adam Brett Walker, a guy like Dalton Hicks, they didn't move up. But there was always prospects ahead of them. Not necessarily great prospects, but guys that you would still consider to be prospects. If you look at that Cedar Rapids outfield, just based on where those guys were selected, Granite, Kanzler, and Murphy, they've played well at the level that they're at, but nobody's going to say, oh, well, they're future Twins outfielders. Murphy's bounced around, the last couple years between Cedar Rapids and Fort Myers. He's older. Are Murphy and Max Murphy, is he a better prospect than Jonathan Murphy? Is Tanner English a better prospect than Jason Kanzler? I mean, these are things that, like you said, let's just get them at bats and see what happens. I think the more important thing is who's getting the at bats next year in full season ball.
Right.
And that's going to be kind of telling on where these guys fit, where they peg in the organizational ladder. Because I think, Tanner English fits right with Jason Kanzler.
Mm-hmm. I think they're very similar.
As a very defensive player. Now, Kanzler, I think, won 2 Gold Gloves in college. Right?
Yep.
Tanner English is apparently MLB ready defensively.
Right.
So let's see how they match head to head.
Well,
you're going to be down there next spring.
Yep.
So you will.
Yeah, and I mean, what's going to happen is the guys that are in Cedar Rapids this year are going to move up to Fort Myers next year, and the guys that are Elizabethton this year will go to full season Cedar Rapids next year. And once those guys are in the league and all that kind of stuff, then they'll start separating each other. But, I mean, I think people worry too much about where this year's draft picks end up. I mean, there was so much talk and disappointment about Nick Birdie going to Cedar Rapids, and I just think, it's a good place for him to start. You don't want to throw him right into AAA or, into the big leagues. That's not going to do him any good. Let's let him just get going at a lower level and find success. And the other thing people don't realize is, as good as Louisville is and as good as the talent is in the College World Series, these teams in low A, I think, and I talked to a lot of people about this, these teams in low A would beat the best college teams most series. Even with guys like Birdie. Now, guys like Birdie are going to move up, but on a team-by-team basis, what Birdie said he found out is, and others have said too, the difference is, in college you're going to have 4 to 5 hitters in each lineup that are pretty good, and then you've got some weaker guys. Even with a a low A type of team, you've got pretty decent hitters, at least 7, 8 deep. So um, and again, we're talking about Max Murphy, who was a ninth round pick last year or this year, and Tanner English, who was an 11th round pick this year. Are people saying the same thing about Mitch Garver as a ninth round pick last year? No one was saying, well, they need to get him up to Cedar Rapids right away. So again, I think the key is get them playing time and let them play, and then just see where it goes. They're gonna weed themselves out over time, and if English needs to move up quicker, he will. But I always believe that first year, those 2 months, it just doesn't really matter where you play. You'll
Right.
figure that all out starting next spring.
Right. I guess my point was that unlike most years, we're looking at a Cedar Rapids team that has less prospects than ever before, hitting wise. Um, but obviously Zach Larson will eventually make his way back too. So yeah, the chances are these guys won't move up. But if you hit 600 in Happy League ball all year, gosh darn it, someone better take notice and move you up.
And they will. I mean, let's look at, 2 years ago, Taylor Rogers pitched like, I don't know, just a couple games in Elizabethton, and they moved him up to um,
Beloit.
to Beloit. DJ Baxendale pitched just a couple of games at Elizabeth, and they moved him up to Beloit. I mean, they've done that. Even last year, I think didn't they have a couple of guys get called
Gilbert.
up later? Bixler and
Right.
Bixler was a 16th round pick, and he got up there.
Ryan Gilbert.
Gilbert. I mean, there's guys. They're going to do that if they earn it, but for the most part, the first year is about getting your feet wet in professional baseball and just kind of fitting in and seeing where you're at and learning the wood bat and all that kind of stuff. And the Twins have shown in previous years they'll get you up to Cedar Rapids if you need to.
From Jay Stimps on Twitter, who gets moved at the deadline?
Um, I mean, I think the obvious names people are going to talk about are Josh Willingham and Kendrys Morales. I mean, those are kind of the easier ones, the guys that can provide some power in the middle of the lineup, but I don't think they can get a whole lot for either one of them. And then I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of bullpen arms moved. To me, I think Swarzak would be a guy that makes a lot of sense because he's got a couple of years of arbitration left, and he's young enough that people could develop him. Dunsing's still young enough and has, I think, a year left of arbitration. I don't know that they could get much for Burton. I don't see that happening. Anything happening with him. Casey Fiend's a guy that you're probably going to have to make a decision on in the off season. Are you going to trade him and get something for him because he's going to start becoming arbitration eligible, or do you consider signing him to a 2 or 3 year deal? So I mean, that's a name that they could actually probably get something for. But other than that, I don't see a lot because Kurt Suzuki is the other name that comes up. But again, as we've talked about before, with really a lack of catching in the organization and the upper levels of guys that can actually catch pretty much every day in the big leagues, they don't really have anybody. So I wouldn't be against trying to, adding a year to his contract at all. So, but he could be a guy that a team would want too.
See, I think though that one of the things that the Twins could do, they like Kurt Suzuki.
Yep.
Kurt, no matter what happens, aside from signing Kurt Suzuki to an extension, Kurt Suzuki is going to be a free agent in December.
Yep.
If the Twins are out of it, or on the outside looking in 3 weeks, I go to Kurt Suzuki and I say, hey, here's the deal. The fill in the blank team who's competing are interested.
Yep.
We like you. We want you here. And, we'd sign you to an extension. But why don't you go play, go contend, go play in the playoffs, and instead of signing that extension for a year or 2 years, come back in December and we'll see if we can give you a 2-year deal.
Yeah. I'd have no problem with that at all.
You
don't see that happen real often, and maybe it happens behind the scenes and teams don't necessarily do it or don't end up doing it, but it's something that to me makes a ton of sense.
And it's the same. You could say the same thing with Kendry Morales. If I think from what I've read, there might be interest in keeping him around. But with Domit too, you sign him to the extension because you liked him. Well, trade him, have him
Yep.
come back. The same thing they did with Aguilera back in the day. Give the guy an opportunity to go compete, go play for something.
But get Hector Carrasco in return in between.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the thing. You're looking at guys that are going to be low A ball pitchers or you know, double A reliever. You're not getting anything back of value. Um, you're getting the Duke Welkers of the world, but at the same time, you're providing that guy with a chance, like they did with Morneau last year. And I think there was probably the Mauer news didn't come out until much later, but I think the Twins knew that was a possibility, and that's why there was no interest in re-signing Mauer or Morneau. But
Yep.
at the same time, what better thing to do with your August and September than to play meaningful baseball?
Right. No,
And
I'd agree. And I would also say this, and we kind of talk about there not being quote unquote prospects down in Cedar Rapids this year. The beauty of the minor league system is that not all first rounders make it, and sometimes you get guys that aren't expected to be prospects that end up making it. And that's why you do something like what you're saying. Even if the guy you get doesn't profile as a class or a grade A or even a grade B prospect in the low minors, maybe you see something in them and they end up taking off. I mean, we saw that with, they got David Ortiz for Dave Hollins, I think, and they got Joe Mays for Roberto Kelly, and some of those types of things. You get an Alexi Casilla from the Angels for J.C. Romero. I mean, there's no harm in grabbing prospects, and if you can have that discussion and say, hey, we want to give you a chance to compete this year. Are you interested in doing that? Would you be interested in going and playing for the whoever? But at the end of the year, we'd really like to talk to you about coming back on a year or two deal. And I don't know how much they can legally, formally, officially say, but I like the idea.
the other thing too is it seems like the Twins, and you followed their minor league system a lot longer than I have, but the Twins have always given the guys that they've brought up and they've developed a longer leash. Last year they turned Drew Butera, who they traded for in the Castilla deal, and they get a low-level prospect for him, and then turn around and flip him for Eduardo Nunez.
Right.
So, I mean, that's another way that you can look at it. It's adding assets. At the end of 2014, Willingham, Correa, probably Burton because you buy him out. These guys are no longer assets for you. But at the end of July, they are. And if you can turn them into assets, whether they're a low-level guy like you mentioned that could turn into something, if they walk, they walk, and there's no asset there. But if you turn it into a young Dominican outfielder that has a shot, well, then you still have an asset.
Yep. I mean, sometimes it's about numbers as much as, it's about, you always want that top prospect, but sometimes if you can get 3 or 4 guys as well, it gives you a better chance of one of them making it.
Last question from a viewer before I have one question for you to end the show. This is from Stoli on Twitter. Is this it for Gardy?
A quick answer, I would say no.
He's back next year.
Yep.
Terry Ryan too.
Yep.
How?
I mean, I would say that would be one of those things that would shock me if they're not.
So does he? I don't know this for certain, but I want to say Gardy got a 2-year deal before this year.
Yep.
Does he get an extension this offseason, or does he play it out, lame duck coach?
Depending on how this ends, if they're at less than 70 wins, I would say they don't do anything. If they're above 74, 75, they might give him an extra year in there just so he's not like a lame duck.
Okay. My question.
What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere. I think Terry Ryan and Gardy are connected at the hip, so they'll be together forever until Terry Ryan retires and Gardy walks into the sunset
Yeah.
wherever he goes. Can I have one question for you? And it's only because we haven't talked about this guy at length for the first time in weeks. When does Well, I guess we kind of talked about it a little bit, but when does J.O. Barrios move up to New Britain?
I would say when Brett Lee is ready to go into the rotation, and possibly even after like David Hurlbut's ready to go in back into the rotation. And I think the timeline would probably be right after the Futures game.
So do you see May, Barrios, you see both those guys getting promoted after the Futures game?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, I can see that. Not absolutely like it's a given,
Yeah.
but
Is there anything else you want to instill our listeners with before we sign off for the week?
no, I mean I think we're good. I want to obviously wish everyone a happy and safe Fourth of July weekend. We'll be back next Tuesday night at the same time. And as we say every week, if you've made it this far, thank you. But let us know what you think. Send us a tweet at Twins Hangouts or at Seth Tweets or at Jeremy Nygaard or just leave us some comments at twinsdaily.com on our Twins Hangout page. Any feedback would be really appreciated. Let us know if you'd like to have guests. Let us know if there's any different formatting things. We just, trying to make this thing take off, and we need you to help us promote it and let people know that we know what we're talking about. So,
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, that's all I really have. And again, thanks to everyone. If anyone from Cedar Rapids happens to be listening to this still, I really appreciate the hospitality they had the 3 days I was there, and looking forward to getting back down there sometime.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously the Twins put up a 10 spot tonight and got a win. Um, I think the thing we take out of tonight's game, Nolasco gets a win, which is good. Um, but the fact that Joe Mauer is injured is going to be something that we need to pay attention to over the next couple days. So,
Yeah.
Seth and I have kind of tossed out some other ideas to each other. So, about how we can make this better. If obviously, like you said, if you have any ideas, let us know, um, and we'll go from there. If these seem too long and you want them more frequently and shorter, that's something that we'd like to know about. If you like the 3 hour marathon session, let us know that too. So, we can make informed decisions for all of our few dozen listeners. You know what I mean?
Nah, I mean,
You wanna drop any Snoop Dogg lines before we take off for tonight?
well, based on how exciting we are and stuff like that, I'd just say Lottie Dottie, we likes to potty.
We
We
don't
don't
talk
cause
about.
trouble. We don't bother nobody. I'll just stop there.
That's pretty impressive.
Because when we rock up on the mic, we mock the right. I mean, we rock the mic right.
All right, there you go. Um, the Snoop Dogg that's been playing in my house lately is the Wiggle 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 song.
Ah, very nice.
My wife had never heard it, but my kids like to sing it,
Well, that's good.
and it's
My
even more.
daughter's favorite song right now happens to be "Talk Dirty to Me," which I heard her listening to it one day and I couldn't believe the lyrics, and I went, "Oh!"
Is that
So,
Jason? That's Derulo too, right?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
you need to do with that Wiggle song is you need to look up the lyrics and then Urban Dictionary half of what he's saying so you understand what they're saying because
Okay.
that makes it not only funny but disgusting. Like when he
Well,
talks about the booty being big as two planets, and then go ahead and ham something about a ham sandwich. Look that part up. It'll make you shake your head. It made me chuckle.
or vomit or something.
You won't vomit.
I might.
You probably send me a text that I won't read out loud. All right, people
Yeah.
are people are our viewers are dropping like it's hot. So we're gonna call it an evening. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for waking up and hanging out in Twins territory. We'll be on iTunes. We'll be on YouTube. We'll be all over the place. Gotta send a shout out to my Domino's guy for recognizing me and listening. So, um, Paul, right? I think his name is Paul.
I think so.
Yeah, Paul from Domino's that listens. So, um, that was my shout out for the week. We'll be back next Tuesday. We'll be hanging out. We'll be talking Twins. Enjoy your 4th of July weekend, and we will see you next Tuesday.